Great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today at the Massachusetts Sierra Club Forum with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. We have two great guests and a great discussion planned. And I really appreciate all of the attention and thought put towards this. Just so folks know, this is going to be a recorded webinar. So we will be posting it up and you'll be able to access that later. Uh, we're also going to have a Q&A section, so you'll see a little button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can ask questions anytime during the presentation to have them be submitted to our Q&A. We have a lot of questions already for folks who pre-registered, and we're only going to have time for some of them, and we'll try to get to the most popular ones. So please, as the presentation goes on, read the questions, upvote the ones you want us to ask our guests. So I wanted to give a little explanation of why we're hosting this event. We're hosting this as an educational opportunity. Massachusetts Sierra Club wanted to create a space hosted by a trusted environmental organization that has a strong anti-nuclear stance to have a chance to explain some of our concerns about this technology and policy, and also give a reasonable and good faith opportunity for the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs to accurately represent the governor's positions and perspectives with recent legislative proposals and new energy technologies on the horizon. And just to clarify for folks, I wanted to get some of the stuff out of the way. Sierra Club is unequivocally opposed to nuclear energy. We take a stance that nuclear is not a technology that contributes to mitigating the climate crisis, that the extraction of the fuel resources, nuclear plant siting, decommissioning, and waste storage are all devastating to our natural environment, and that it is part of a technology inextricably linked to nuclear proliferation. Every dollar spent on nuclear is $1 less for renewable energy, such as solar, photovoltaics, and wind. Folks also might have heard that the governor's bill, H 4144, includes a provision that would remove a requirement for a state ballot initiative for any new nuclear facility. Sierra Club, Massachusetts, as a chapter, opposes that legislation, the requirement in that legislation to, we oppose the provision in the legislation that would remove that requirement. It's a little complicated with all the different stuff going on there. So I'm going to hand it off now to Chris Powicki. He's the chair of our Cape Cod and Islands group who set up the event and has been working on this for many, many years. So go ahead, Chris.
Good evening, everyone. I really appreciate so many folks are out here tonight and also our guests from EEA. So this event originated from discussions at one of our regular meetings, and there were people at that meeting, and I think this is sort of representative of the Sierra Club membership more broadly, who were concerned about the governor's proposal, and there are some people who are nuclear curious, and we felt it was really important for people to hear from the Healey administration on the proposal itself, so you get an accurate perception of why the Healey administration has proposed what it did in House Bill 4144. We usually host our monthly speaker presentations on the third Tuesday of the month. This is third Thursday. Next month, our third Tuesday presentation on February 17th will focus on the topic of dark skies and light pollution. And the Sierra Club Cape Cod and Islands group is interested in helping local communities adopt dark skies bylaws. So if you're on Sierra Club's mailing list, you'll be able to have a chance to perhaps register for that event if you're interested in it. So Vic mentioned some of the logistics. During the moderated Q&A, we will be drawing on questions submitted in advance as well as through the chat. So please do submit questions if you have them. Just try not to duplicate questions that are already in the chat. You can vote to prioritize those. We did receive a lot of questions. And so now we'll get to the sort of the subject on the table tonight. And so I want to introduce our two speakers. Tonight we have Melissa Lavinson. Melissa serves as the Executive Director of the state's Office of Energy Transformation. first Office of Energy Transformation in the country. Melissa's charged with the hands-on execution of the clean energy transition, including ensuring the availability and readiness of electrical infrastructure, electric and gas transition coordination, and a just and equitable transition for impacted workers, communities, and businesses. Melissa also charged with convening an energy transformation advisory board comprised of industry, labor, environmental justice, technology, consumer, and supply chain representatives, among others, to accelerate cooperation, understanding, and action. And our second speaker is Mary Louise Nuara, also known as Weezie. Weezie is Deputy Secretary for Federal and Regional Environmental Affairs in the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. There, Weezie is focused on advancing the Commonwealth's affordability, reliability, and clean energy priorities through state, regional, and federal collaboration. And so with that, I'm going to turn the reins over to Melissa and Weezie.
Well, thank you so much, Chris and Vic. We really, really appreciate the outreach and the opportunity to talk to you all tonight. Really excited for the opportunity to answer any questions you might have. And we'll start first with a presentation, and then we can launch into some Q&A. I always like to start with a bit of help provide context for the conversation. So I'll walk through these slides. Melissa and I will walk through these slides, and then we can jump to the Q&A. So first, I always just like to take a look at the New England region as a whole. Massachusetts, we're not an energy island. We share a regional grid, the six-state ISO New England grid, and we're connected to neighboring power systems. So this region has 9,000 miles of high voltage transmission lines crisscrossing it, carrying power throughout the region. On the right-hand side, you can see the six-state New England region and the high voltage transmission system. The blue lines, those are the 345 kV transmission lines. That's really the backbone of the high voltage transmission system, highway system for moving power around the region. We have a small smattering of 230 kV transmission, that's the green lines, and then 115 kV, those are the red lines here in the New England region. We've got 13 transmission lines that connect us to neighboring power systems in New York, Quebec, and New Brunswick. And we actually rely on our neighbors for imports of power each year to meet the demand for electricity. In fact, 9% of the region's energy needs were met by imports of power in 2024. We're still waiting on numbers for 2025. But this is an important source of power for us, and soon we will have the fourth transmission line interconnecting us to neighboring power systems. The New England Clean Energy Connect project will be live tomorrow, sending 1,200 megawatts of power down from Hydro-Quebec into the New England region. So a really exciting development, and really the flow of power over those lines is really based on need and economics. So if a generator were to trip offline here in New England, power would typically flow into the region until we could pick up generation here to recover from the loss of that generator. And then when prices are high, we often see power flowing into the New England region. So an important part of the mix, imports of power. Of course, we've got roughly 400 generators interconnected to that high voltage transmission system throughout the region. So that, of course, includes natural gas fired generation, wind and utility scale solar, nuclear, of course, and onshore wind up in northern New England. And all in all, that's about 30,000 megawatts of total generating capacity across the entire generation fleet here in New England. We've seen all-time summer peak demand. We saw all-time summer peak demand set back in August of 2006 at about 28,000 megawatts. Pretty remarkable that we have not seen electricity demand reach that level in now 2 decades. And it's a real testament to the investments that have been made in energy efficiency and behind the meter solar here in the region. And we'll get to that as well. As you all know, the flow of power over this high voltage system is managed by the grid operator, that's ISO New England. And they are making sure that the resources across the region are called on when needed and they move the power around the region to meet demand for electricity every minute of every day. Anything else that's worth mentioning here?
I think you covered the region really nicely. The only thing I would add is on ISO New England, right? Their role is to really make sure we've got a reliable grid and that grid is optimized for the benefit of customers and for the benefit of the region. And so they're really looking at how do we make sure we have a portfolio that can meet the multiple needs of not just Massachusetts, but the entire New England region.
That's right. Go ahead.
Okay, and I think to that, and I'll start in Weezie, please feel free to jump in. When you look at what that resource mix is and how it's evolved over time, I really love this graph because it shows two things. One, to Weezie's point about when was the last time we hit peak electric demand? Well, when you just look at overall annual electricity usage, you can see that we're actually using less today than we were back in 2000. And that's pretty remarkable. And that is, again, we said, a testament to energy efficiency demand response programs that we have. And then the investments that we made in Massachusetts is truly a leader in that. And that's something that we're going to continue to lead in and we continue to invest in. When you look at the evolution of the resource mix in the region, I think, again, what we're seeing is we've seen carbon emissions come down. And we've seen that because what we've really seen is back in 2000, right, a reliance on coal and oil. And once we've seen replace that over time is we've seen a growing resource mix in terms of our natural gas. And we've also seen renewables coming online over that time. So we've really done a really good job as a region of displacing starting to displace our higher emitting fossil fuels.
Sorry, is that happening for everybody? The audio cut out just for that last sentence.
Oh, sorry. Is it, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back. You're back on.
Great. I think just the point we're going to make from this is that while we've seen an evolution and moving away from our higher emitting resources like coal and oil, we've seen more of a reliance on natural gas for our baseload generation, which we know has price volatility. And really does drive a lot of our electric pricing in the region. And so as we consider moving forward, how do we make sure that we meet our carbon goals? And we do it in a way that we can meet our energy needs. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide, what we're doing our growing energy needs. And that we're doing it in a way that optimizes a portfolio and that does it in a way that is overall affordable for the system as a whole. And so that's really what we're trying to look at is how do we keep going, but how do we provide more diversity in our fuel mix going forward, more diversity that allows us to meet our climate goals.
And as we think about what resources may be on the horizon, we know that our greenhouse gas reduction mandates, our clean energy requirements, and the competitive procurements that we are administering as a state and really as a region, it's really driving the future resource mix, or at least the resources that have expressed interest in interconnecting to the New England power system. So when you take a look at the ISO New England queue, the interconnection queue, now they are making major reforms to the interconnection queue. So this will all change in terms of its administration, but this is from April 2025, and you can see that the queue is really made up of renewables and battery storage. So a huge chunk of wind, most of that being offshore wind. Of course, Massachusetts has a mandate to procure 5,600 megawatts of offshore wind. We are extremely excited about Vineyard Wind, an 800 megawatt project that is nearing completion, and we are committed to that resource and that resource being a part of the overall mix. Of course, battery storage has become a huge part of the interest in interconnecting to the grid. And will be, absolutely vital as we start bringing on more wind, more solar onto the system.
And Massachusetts is being a leader in battery storage, and there was a question around that. We do have our goals of 5,000 megawatts of battery storage in 2030. We've gone out with one procurement. We'll be going out with other procurements shortly, but again, wanting to really make sure that we're taking advantage of that technology.
When you look at the last 20 years, the last 2 decades, we've touched on this already, we've actually seen net energy use or electricity consumption decline over time. And again, that's a testament to the investments we've made in energy efficiency and behind the meter solar, just an incredible impact on overall demand for electricity across the region. When we look at the next 2 decades, though, this is the ISO New England forecast. We do see an energy use, energy consumption is expected to increase significantly, with winter peak demand expected to double by 2045. So you can see that in 2025, 117,000 gigawatt hours, looking to grow over the next 2 decades to about 169,000 gigawatt hours. I will also note that this forecast does not include potential data center demand in the region. Now, we aren't on the forefront of data center demand or data center growth. You see other regions of the country with
Sorry, just cut out a little bit right here.
about that. Are we back?
Yeah, now you're back. It
Okay.
was intermittent. Yeah,
Apologize. I
no pun
apologize for that.
intended. Yeah.
Yeah, apologize for that. Just the point that at this time, data centers aren't part of this expected increase in.
I think we got the point that data centers were not in this. It did cut out again.
Okay, great.
No
Just
problem.
wanted to make sure. And just kind of finishing off this one, just as we sort of think through what our future looks like. That shift from summer to winter peak, as we go back to the ISO New England is looking at how do I optimize and meet need across the system, looking at the resources we have today and potentially the resources that may be needed tomorrow. That shift of when peak happens from summer to winter does have implications for resources as well. And so, we can talk a little bit about that, about how solar has really helped us meet our summer peak. Solar is going to be really important going forward, as is offshore wind, as is storage. And we're going to need to figure out how to optimize all that, because we know in the winter, all those resources operate differently than they do in the summer. And so it's going to be up to ISO and all of us to figure out how to continue to meet our climate goals, meet our affordability goals, and meet our winter peaking needs.
And just a point on solar, quickly, we continue to invest in solar PV to advance our decarbonization priorities, clean energy priorities. We've seen tremendous growth in solar over the last 2 decades, from 4 megawatts to more than 4,000 megawatts.
The audio just cut out after you said 4,000 megawatts. I'm not sure what it is. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Point is, we have quite a bit of solar installed on the distribution system.
Yeah, it cut out again.
Maybe we can try and switch maybe the audio to the
room.
Let
We
me
usually find it's better on the computer, but we could try it.
Were you reading off the slide? At least then folks can kind of hear the message roughly.
Yeah, can you hear me right now?
I can, yeah.
Right. I think sort of the key takeaway from this is we know solar plays a role. It's going to continue to play a role. We've got programs in place in Massachusetts to make sure that happens. And so, that's something that we think is going to be really important to affordably and reliably meet our energy needs going forward. And we know we're going to need other resources to pair with that.
We don't have to dwell on this slide, but this is just the impact it can have on regional demand for electricity. It really appears as a reduction in grid demand for electricity, which is important. ISO New England is not having to dispatch, 4,000 and 5,000 megawatts of additional generation, additional natural gas, other generation to meet demand. It's instead being met behind the meter by solar. Of course, other resources are important. Offshore wind we've talked about, onshore wind resources up in northern New England. We talked about the New England Clean Energy Connect project, which will bring hydropower down from Canada. We know that the transmission infrastructure associated with bringing some of those energy supplies to demand centers in New England is important. So we really have been laser focused on steps to build out the region's transmission system to access these clean energy resources.
And so kind of building on that, again, trying to set I think Weezie did a really nice job of with these slides and trying to set, kind of where we're looking and where we're going as a region. And as a state, we recognize that we're seeing demand grow. We're seeing more and more renewable energy come online. We're leaning in on storage, and we need to continue to explore a wide range of technologies. And so when you look at the governor's energy affordability bill, there's several provisions on there that are really important to getting more energy built and getting more energy online. And some of those are how we procure energy today. I know we're talking about the nuclear provision, but I do want to set a context of other provisions in that bill because I think it's really, really, really important. One of the key provisions in that bill is to provide and expand the flexibility that our Department of Energy Resources has to procure all kinds of clean energy resources, both flexibility in when they procure it, in what quantities, and how they do that. And that's going to be really important. And also changing how that procurement works, so to reduce the cost of that procurement. And so we see that as a really important piece. We've got provisions in there around flexible interconnection. So this is to try to bring solar and storage, distributed solar and storage online faster and cheaper than it is today. And so there's a lot of work that we did in that bill to look at that. And then more holistically, comprehensive energy planning and comprehensive load management planning. So this is looking at our distribution utilities in particular to better plan the distribution system so that we're optimizing our investments on that side. And then to concurrently do load management planning, which is really important, right? So to better matching the ability of our customers to provide demand response so that we're optimizing both what we need from an electricity standpoint, but also optimizing the kind of build we're doing on the distribution side to keep costs down. So there's several provisions in the bill to try to get more clean energy built, do it cheaper, and bring more clean energy, particularly solar storage, online faster. There is a provision, as we talked about, that was the point of today, that also does look at providing an opportunity for us to look at and explore the role that nuclear could play in the region. And so there is a provision that would repeal the mandate that any proposed nuclear power plant or a low-level radioactive waste facility receive a vote from a statewide ballot initiative and approval by the general court. A couple things that went into that. One, no other proposed power generation source is subject to these requirements. So we were sort of looking across that and making sure, though, that right, nothing in the bill would do anything to negate the rigorous federal, state, local approvals that would be required through formal siting and licensing processes. So what this is about is exploration and looking ahead. It's not making any determination. It's just saying that we want to make sure that we're looking being able to look at resources on a level playing field across various resources.
And one reason to at least explore the idea of new advanced nuclear technologies is some of the findings that have come out of some regional study work. This is a couple graphics from ISO New England studies, and they suggest that firm dispatchable resources like small modular reactors could
just cut out again after small modular nuclear reactors.
No problem.
You're back.
How about, okay, great. Apologies again. So we have seen, some regional study work that at least suggests that, these firm dispatchable resources like small modular reactors could reduce the overall build out of the system needed to meet our decarbonization mandates and demand for electricity. So ISO New England's 2024 economic study showed that when you added small modular reactors and long duration battery energy storage systems, you reduce the overall build out of the system by, roughly 15 gigawatts, which could help reduce the overall cost, the capital costs of building out that system. Another study was done by the ISO on the right-hand side, and it did not include those resources in its policy scenario build out. It did, though, include small modular reactors in one of its sensitivity analyses. Build out and associated costs. And the key takeaway from that sensitivity was that if you added, roughly 15 gigawatts of small modular reactors, you could achieve the state's 2050 decarbonization requirement, while requiring 57% less capacity.
Sorry, it just after 57%. I think it's worth explaining this rationale.
Sure. So ISO New England, in this sensitivity, it did add the 15 gigawatts of small modular reactors, which showed that you didn't have to build out the system to a full 97 gigawatts in order to meet our decarbonization requirements and the demand for electricity. Capital cost,
which translates into overall lower system costs for the region and for customers. So again, as Weezie said, this is a study, but from our system operator that has done some rigorous analysis and sort of looking at this. And so we looked at this study and we're really interested in other studies as well, but this is sort of one where I know there was a question around cost, and this is just sort of one of the studies that's out there that ISO New England has done that is showing that nuclear can provide overall less need to build and lower overall system costs. And when you sort of think about also a region like New England that does have sort of space constraints, trying to get some power density is, I think, is what also ISO New England is looking at.
And so in November, you likely saw that we announced our partnership with UMass Lowell on the development of an advanced nuclear and fusion energy roadmap report. This report really is about understanding our current strengths and current capabilities when it comes to nuclear, the existing nuclear ecosystem that we do have here in Massachusetts, and then
just cut out for a second.
Apologies again. Again, we want to take a look at our current capabilities and strengths when it comes to nuclear, and then understand better what we might need to do to explore new nuclear in the future. It'll help guide some state level decision making in the years ahead, and we've been, or at least UMass Lowell has been holding informational webinars as well as stakeholder sessions. And the report is looking to explore, workforce development, an assessment of the various technologies, advanced nuclear and fusion energy technologies, and potential use cases for Massachusetts. Importantly, community engagement when it comes to exploring new nuclear, and then exploring new nuclear. So that is the purpose of the roadmap report.
Yeah, and so really it's a report to understand kind of where the state is, where the state of play is today on both advanced nuclear and fusion energy, and to understand the history that the state has had with both technologies in terms of the role that it's played and the role that it has played in our state, as well as understanding the current technology assessment that's out there, looking broadly across both advanced nuclear and fusion energy. And I think that, Weezie indicated doing stakeholder engagement, we really want to get perspectives from across, the ecosystem here in Massachusetts on all of these topics. And so UMass Lowell has been holding stakeholder engagement sessions, asking people for input. There's an ability to provide input in writing. And when the report comes out, it will provide an overview of that input to be inclusive, because we want this to have all perspectives provided. And so, if folks haven't had an opportunity to provide input, we can get you the link, we can get you the contact information, because we do want, when this comes out as an exploration, it should explore the various perspectives of nuclear in the state, and the various perspectives of fusion energy in the state.
And then we are happy to answer questions you have.
Great. Thank you so much for that quick run through. You covered a lot of topics, and so we're going to try to pick questions from the chat and also that were submitted earlier to try to, in combination, address some of the concerns or questions people have. And I'm going to start with a question on sort of the process. What's the biggest motivation of the administration in seeking to change existing state law? Is it to eliminate the requirement for a public referendum, or the requirement for a federal repository for long-term waste storage? And just to follow on that, is there any discussion that you're aware of ongoing with the Trump administration regarding the promotion or support for a federal repository?
Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Great. All right. So first, thanks. That really, appreciate the question. And I think, for us, sort of the biggest motivation is actually just to open ourselves to, as a state, to conversations, and on the exploration of both advanced nuclear and fusion energy. And that really is the primary motivation. We want to be able to have serious conversations with multiple parties, multiple stakeholders. This provision has actually elicited those conversations. We're having some tonight. We're having some with folks that have a different perspective on nuclear. By putting this provision in there, it's actually, I think, jump-started a conversation on nuclear, and we are very interested in having a serious conversation and serious exploration. In terms of your question of engagement on I think with the Trump administration, I don't think we're not aware of any, and I would just
not aware of conversations relating to a permanent repository with the federal government.
Okay, thank you. Vic, do you want to take one, or do you want me to do another one?
Why don't you go for it?
Okay, so just to get back to that question about the federal repository, there is no existing repository, and according to Union of Concerned Scientists, small modular reactors may generate more waste and more complex wastes. Can you explain sort of why this issue of storage outside of the boundaries of the Commonwealth is not a showstopper? As of now, we have essentially a long-term disposal site or storage site in Plymouth. And so without a federal repository, there's a real question of whether new sites will also involve storage of waste.
It's a great question. It's an important question, an important consideration. And that's, I think, exactly why we want to pursue this roadmap to understand the various technologies, their characteristics, file is for these tech.
And so, we hope the Union of Concerned Scientists is in providing that input, providing that engagement, because again, that, as we said, all the perspectives are going to be provided in that, so that we can see it all, understand it all, and understand the technologies, where they are today, what the outlook is for them, and what the implications are of each technology. That's exactly why we're doing this roadmap.
Great, thanks. I'll ask another one, Vic, until you tell me otherwise. So we've only got a handful of years left to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to avoid the most devastating effects of climate change, and with developments recently, Massachusetts goals for 2030 are in jeopardy. Yet no small modular reactors are operating in the U.S. today, and the time it takes to permit and construct a nuclear power plant is at least a decade. So how does this timeline work to address the biggest concerns about climate change in the near term?
Yeah, so I think, a couple things on that. First, I think as we tried to convey in the presentation, right, we are leaning in on solar, we are leaning in on storage, we are leaning in on wind. We're trying to get it built as fast as we can. And collaborate with other states across New England and also with our friends in Canada. Which we're seeing the impacts of that coordination now with again, as we said, the NECEC project, which is going to be delivering 1,200 megawatts, which is a significant amount of resources into New England and help us meet our energy needs here in Massachusetts. And that project took 10 to 12 years. And so when you sort of think about large infrastructure projects, we need to start thinking today and exploring the options today of what's out there if we want to move forward with various options in a future time frame. And I say if. And so that's what the exploration is about. And because we know large energy infrastructure projects take time, they take time to understand. They take time to permit, they take time to site, they take time to build, just like we saw with NECEC, just like we saw with our offshore wind. It takes time, just like we see with some larger scale solar projects. So, they're all going to come on at different time frames, but we're not waiting. We're bringing on the resources we can bring on that are going to help meet our carbon goals and help drive down price volatility and meet our energy needs affordably.
Great, thanks. A recent peer-reviewed study titled Residential Proximity to Nuclear Power Plants and Cancer Incidents in Massachusetts from 2000 to 2018 was published in Environmental Health, and it shows that proximity to nuclear plants in Massachusetts is associated with elevated cancer risks. Can you comment on how this recently released study would play into the administration's decision making?
Well, it's a great question, and we're aware of the study. I haven't dug into it.
Sorry, cut out a bit right there. I'm wondering if maybe trying to lean in, if there's like a threshold level set.
Maybe that helps.
We'll get closer, lean over our computer.
Yeah, maybe that will help. I was just saying it's important to understand that study. We have provided it to our Department of Public Health, and really, I think this roadmap needs to take into account all aspects of nuclear power generation, and we need to understand the technology better, and we need to understand all of these considerations better. And so, we will certainly be looking at that.
Yeah, and we know UMass Lowell is aware of the study as well, and I believe we're going to be reaching out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Vic, you want to go or should I keep going?
Yeah, I like this one. So I have it pre-drafted. To accelerate advanced nuclear plant licensing and permitting, the current federal administration is or will be reducing existing safety requirements and review processes. Why should Massachusetts be pursuing this path under this relaxed regulatory environment? And how will the Healey administration reassure the public that new designs are safe?
Sure. I can start. Safety is absolutely paramount. We will absolutely, there's no compromising safety and security. And we will insist on, if we are to explore new nuclear, it will certainly come with the most rigorous federal, state, and local review of any facility. We would not be compromising on safety and security.
And I think again, as you look at the roadmap, there was a pillar in there looking at regulatory and policy, and this is again where we're encouraging stakeholder input to make these kind of points, so that again we have a full range of perspective, so that we understand what issues are that we need to take a look at in the state as we're exploring.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of us have been disappointed at the NRC and with the current administration, just very worried about federal government walking back, a lot of their historic commitments. So we have I'm going to pull one from some of our top voted ones. I think you've covered a lot of the stuff being asked here. So this is from one of our allies. I'm going to try to summarize it a little bit. So from an efficiency and cost perspective, nuclear takes many years to bring online, takes on average for large scale nuclear 15 years until it's operational. Per kilowatt hour, it tends to be pretty expensive compared to renewable energy if you include construction costs. So is this the most effective use of Massachusetts incentives and state resources while the cost of renewable energy is going down?
Well, I think you've seen us double down on our efforts to bring on renewable energy, including wind, solar, and battery storage, and we will continue to do that. We need to understand the economics of advanced nuclear and fusion energy better. You raise this person raises a number of good points. We need to understand those economics, and we need to understand how they compare against other resources, because we do need the most cost-effective, clean, reliable resource mix that we can possibly have. And so it's important to understand these technologies and at what cost do they come.
Yeah. And I think, we're going to be in a position, because we are seeing others start to pursue some of this. And so we'll get some real life cost data, some construction data, as we see sort of that first gen. And then we'll see, we're hopeful, coming out of this roadmap report, that we'll start to just then get to understand what maybe some of that second gen will look like. But that, we will start to have some real world examples coming on in the next 3 to 5 years. And we'll see.
We're not in the category of first movers. We're not among the states in the first wave of exploring nuclear, and that's okay. We need to understand the technology, and we need to understand whether it fits within our resource mix.
Yeah, I have a follow-up for that. So are there specific small modular nuclear projects that you're following?
I am aware of the Darlington New Nuclear Project up in Ontario. So I have seen that project announced, and I believe they have plans to bring on by 2030 or so. And then I believe they have plans for a second, third, and fourth small modular reactor at that site. And I believe it's a 300 megawatt SMR design that they have gone with. And so a great example of a first mover and a project that we can watch and learn from.
Yeah, and then we thought the announcement that TVA has made, they're gonna have to start moving forward and looking at some of what they're gonna be looking at. So we're gonna get to see, how that evolves with TVA as well.
So I'm going to ask another economic question. Just that the economics of nuclear power are challenging, and direct and indirect subsidies from taxpayers and ratepayers have been essential. Either that or the direct costs are extremely high. So we pay one way, or ratepayers, taxpayers pay one way or the other. How do you think this factor will influence future energy affordability? There's been a lot of concern about some of the charges on our bills and some of the incentives that have been granted to the technologies that Sierra Club strongly supports. So how do you think that'll play out in the future as regards either direct or indirect incentives?
It's a great question. I mean, the economics are really going to drive all of this. I think. I mean, at least the ISO New England study shows that at some point in time, small modular reactors, even using conservative numbers, will play a moderate role in the resource mix and help to meet electricity demand and our decarbonization requirements cost effectively. But again, we have not seen small modular reactors, advanced nuclear technologies deployed at scale yet. And so we have a lot to learn, and the economics are just critically important.
Okay. Switching a little bit. So small modular reactors, advanced reactors do require cooling. Does this limit, or would this potentially limit candidate sites for future deployment in Massachusetts to sites where there's already basically an existing power plant or a decommissioned power plant where there was previously cooling water withdrawn? Or are you looking at other ways of addressing this issue?
So I think, back to what we're hoping to get out of the roadmap report from the technology assessment is actually understanding the attributes of each of the technologies, right? What they need, both in terms of, right, what they're going to need from a cooling perspective, what they're going to need from a land availability perspective. So part of what we're learning, what we want to get out of this is understanding the attributes for each kind of technology. Because we know that advanced nuclear, there are different kinds of technologies out there. They have different kinds of, cooling systems. They use water differently. Also, the report is looking at fusion energy machines, which also has a different footprint, uses resources differently. And so we can look across all the different attributes, and that will, I think, provide us, better information about, how we can consider moving forward, if we consider moving forward. Because that's just going to help dictate and understand what the possibilities are, or what the possibilities are not. And that's why we're really doing this roadmap report. We want to have serious information and be able to have kind of serious conversations.
Great, thanks. Vic, you going ahead?
Absolutely. So I just want to do a time check. We're getting close to our 7:30 end time. I'm clicking through some of the questions in the Q&A for folks in the audience to try to make sure that we're not repeating ourselves and asking the same questions over and over. So please upvote the ones that you still want to see. I really like this one from Deb Katz. So the Healey administration resilience plan seems to ignore the escalating effects of climate disruption and nuclear power. Both is it Yankee Row and Pilgrim have millions of curies of high-level nuclear waste stored on site. This waste is vulnerable to maximum precipitation events, massive flooding. How can the Healey administration even consider nuclear when there is this waste trapped at reactor sites in the state with no solution in sight? And I also want to bring up the economics, and this is going off of the question a little bit, but the economics of decommissioning and what we've seen foisted on ratepayers in Connecticut. And, we're worried about that possibility in Massachusetts.
Generally about the energy affordability bill?
Yeah, and I think, back to the, I think this is sort of similar to a question around spent fuel and part of this is, again, I know we've talked about the roadmap quite a lot, but this is, again, trying to take all this into perspective as we develop this, to look at, where are all the issues, including of spent fuel, both storage and what comes next. So that is definitely going to be part of this. And so again, really appreciate that. In terms of like overall economics, affordability is top priority, right? Economics are going to be a priority. We're going to have to think about the economics of this holistically. Decommissioning is part of the cost. It's just, and so when we look at that and look at the technology assessment and look at the economics of each one of those will definitely be something in this roadmap report that will come out. We'll have to say, this is a cost that will have to be considered in the overall economics of any facility.
So, and one of the questions that came up on the chat was a question about what's the scale of small modular reactors relative to conventional ones, which are generally like 600 megawatts, 1,000 megawatts, sometimes bunched together. So you have, thousands of megawatts at an individual site. How would the small modular reactors compare? And then, based on that, 15.1 gigawatts in New England, that would presumably involve a whole lot of sites. So.
Good question. I mean, I've seen a number of nuclear designs, small modular reactors ranging from 50 megawatts up to 300 megawatts. The Darlington new nuclear project, as I mentioned earlier, utilizing the 300 megawatt BWRX technology. I believe it's GE Hitachi. So you're right. These advanced nuclear technologies range in size, And I believe below 20 megawatts, you're talking about micro reactors. So a lot of designs out there. And so it's, part of this roadmap is understanding all of the designs, all of the technologies, and better understanding their use cases. I believe there's also some larger designs, the 1,000 megawatt design that is perhaps the units. And the scenario analysis that ISO New England, that scenario analysis, I think we will continue to look for studies and additional analysis that helps us better understand cost-effective, lowest cost, most affordable way to build out our system to meet demand for electricity and decarbonize. So it's an iterative process. That was simply one study and one data point.
And I think you make a great point about just talked about a little bit sort of the overall footprint of New England. We're going to need to look at how we're going to meet our energy demand needs, both kind of baseload demand as well as peak demand, how we're going to do it in a way that meets our climate and clean energy goals, and how we do it in a way that is affordable and that takes into consideration the constraints we have as a region, in terms of our overall geographic footprint, energy infrastructure takes up space. So we're going to have to figure out how to optimize that to get what we need, to get the power density we need, to get the base load that we need, to get the peaking that we need, and to meet our climate goals as affordably. It's a lot to balance, and we know that, and that's why we're exploring. We kind of ending where we started, exploring various technologies we know, and we've done. We're leaning in on ones that we understand, and moving forward with wind, solar, storage, and exploring next generation technologies that are out there. And that's what this is about.
Okay, I think this is probably a good final question, depending on how long it takes you to answer. So what happens next if the UMass Lowell's work, the roadmap, gives a green light or a red light? What's sort of the next steps that are envisioned with exploring nuclear?
Sure. And just to be clear, like the outcome of the report isn't a red light or green light. The outcome of this report is really to facilitate, foster understanding for a broad range of topics that we're addressing there in the report, and to make sure that we can transparently understand across everybody's perspectives, and that's what the stakeholder input is for. So the report will acknowledge kind of the range of perspectives on these various topics, and also using the best available information that's out there. We're trying to get it right on the technology assessment, on the cost assessment, on where the history of nuclear and fusion energy in Massachusetts, the role that we've played, both from a workforce perspective, from a research perspective. We're in advanced manufacturing here in Massachusetts right now on fusion energy. I think that's a really important thing. The whole ecosystem there. So really looking at the role we've played, the competitive advantages we might have, our history with these technologies, where they are today, where they're expected to go, and what the various perspectives are. That's what we're hoping to get out of this, so that we can all take a step back and continue to have these serious conversations that we're having. And in fact, we're really excited that actually the provision has really brought this to life and really allowed us to have, I think, dig in and start to really hear and get the perspectives, and making sure that we can have these conversations with everybody.
Yeah, really appreciate certainly the outreach from you all and all the perspectives that we have heard. We're in an exploratory phase, and we'll be there for some time. I mean, this UMass report will help inform some next steps as we continue to explore advanced nuclear and fusion energy.
All right, so seeing we're at time, I just want to super thank Melissa and Weezie from the EEA Thank you, Chris, and our Sierra Club members and volunteer leaders for having this forum. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and all the folks who are going to watch this on YouTube or Zoom or whatever we're going to send it out on. We got a lot of requests to watch this as a video, so I think there's a lot of folks who are really curious about where this provision came from, because it felt like it kind of came from nowhere to a lot of folks who follow this policy. So I don't know, Chris, if you wanted to say any last words. But yeah, I really appreciate the time everyone spent having this discussion and hearing each other out.
Yeah, I guess I'd just say this is sort of exactly what I think the Cape Cod and Islands group was looking for 4 or 5 months ago when we first talked about this. Really appreciate your willingness to sit down and sort of wrestle with some difficult questions from some people who are really questioning what you're up to. And I think we leave tonight with a better understanding of why you're doing this and sort of what the bounds are of this ongoing roadmap study. And I think there'll be continued concerns about the legislation. But, I think that, overall, this exploration is really important for the state and for our energy future and for our climate future. So again, thanks very much.
Couldn't agree more, Chris. Thank you both for the opportunity. These conversations are so important, so we really do appreciate it.